how the hell are we here at this point in time in America where we can't talk about certain things without being banned, censored, deplatformed, whatever? You talked about living at crazy times. I also think that everything that we hold dear, Lisa, is just so balanced on a knife's edge right now.
That's why I was so passionate during COVID, speaking up out of all of this, because I was thinking to myself, are we still a free country when you've got the government telling you can't leave your house, you can't go to church, you can't worship, like only certain people are allowed to exercise their First Amendment rights. If you want to go riot in the streets in the name of, George Floyd, that's fine. But you want to go to church, like God forbid, stay home, right? And then also just trying to force people to get a vaccine that now we know is not even safe. The entire time I was just thinking to myself, like, are we still even a free country? And what are we becoming, right? And so I think that to me was the biggest driver of wanting to speak out and all of it. And then also just really early on in it, I read an op-ed from Dr. John Ioannidis of Stanford. He's a world-renowned epidemiologist who is known for debunking bad research. And at the very beginning, he was like, basically, COVID is not as deadly as we think it is. And we're making all these terrible decisions based off of faulty data. He sort of just completely changed my mindset from then on of realizing that essentially everything we were being told was a lie. And then even looking at vaccines, the government has spent so much money paying all these entities, whether it's the media or whatever, to push the vaccine and to tell us that it's safe, and no one has questioned it. So I think people are pretty fair to not really believe much of what we're told these days at all.
Yeah, and I think people like Fauci have done such incredible damage to institutions that were once trusted in America, like the NIH and the CDC. And come to find out that Fauci, not only has he been spewing information that was just flat out wrong, because if you remember at the beginning of this thing, there were emails that leaked from Dr. Fauci saying that, masks, like they really aren't that effective, to now, like a week later saying that everybody should wear their mask. Even little things like that, him saying those things have caused such tremendous damage to, like I said, institutions that were once valued and trusted in this country. And you look at what the New York Times is even doing now. Like, you've seen the buzzword now, the New York Times, CBS, ABC, NBC, the triple demic. So just as we're coming out of COVID and it looks like the craziness is over, we seem to be sort of backsliding into where we were a year ago, where the triple demic now, they're pushing RSV, the flu, which is, of course, taking a vacation for 2 years, and now COVID pushing this. And if you look at even in Philadelphia, Lisa, where Philadelphia schools have preemptively gone back to universal masking for children, despite all of the evidence to the contrary about the detrimental social effects of masking on speech development and cognition and barriers to learning for small children in school. Philadelphia's schools, in the face of all the empirical evidence to the contrary, have forced masks back on children going to school, despite the fact that Philadelphia Eagles are playing football games there every Sunday with 60,000 people there without a mask. It absolutely makes no sense. My hope is that when Republicans take control of the House, that there will be hearings, that people will be held accountable. Where are you on that? Do you have any faith that the new Republican majority in the House will follow through with those promises?
I think they'll investigate, but then, what recourse is going to happen? What actual punishment will happen, right? Because we don't have the Department of Justice, and we know that Merrick Garland is not going to give us the assist like he's given the January 6th committee and enforcing, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah. I don't think anything's necessarily going to happen, which is sad. But, if you really look at it, even though none of this makes sense, if you're a critical thinker and you actually care about what the data shows and the underlying reasons behind all this, the objective is control. And if you look at the left, it's with climate change or with COVID, it's somehow the solution is giving up your freedom, right? Like the government Absolutely. Is somehow going to keep us safe in the name of us giving up our freedom. But then part of me also thinks, have we ever really been able to trust any of these agencies, to be perfectly honest? Are we just finding out more? And really, have we ever been able to trust our own government, or really have we ever been as free as we have thought we have? Is it really just sort of an illusion, like this manufactured illusion? So like this is the one thing that really worries me a lot is, look, the First Amendment was the first for a reason, right? You look at communist nations, authoritarian nations, what they do is when they take over, they control the media so that they can push propaganda and that they're unchallenged. And they also control and censor the internet. And, you know, you look at what's happening in America right now, and like, how is our media really that much different, right? When do they actually challenge authority or challenge the left? They're essentially a propaganda machine. I mean, they're not really, it's not like they're exposing daylight or trying to reach any sort of transparency, with the exception of, you know, Fox and some of these other places. But by and large, they don't care. And then you look at the censorship of the internet with during COVID, especially, or even with the Hunter Biden story, of going in and literally disallowing the sharing of a story, taking down the New York Post from Twitter. And it's like, you know, I mean, it just, are we really that free? Or, you know, are we as free as we've, you know, thought we have been? You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I mean, I agree. I agree. It's unbelievably concerning.